The wind howls through the cracks of an ancient stone cottage. A mother sits beside a dim hearth, her hands trembling as she pulls a thin wool blanket tighter around her child. The walls leak cold like breath from a tomb, frost crawling along the windows. Outside, the village is silent, buried under snow, its thatched roofs glistening in the pale moonlight. The year is 1347, and the winter has no mercy. Yet somehow, these people survived. How? You and I would never last a night in a medieval home during winter. No insulation, no heating system. Just stone, wood, and faith. And yet, entire generations endured centuries of brutal cold. They didn't just survive. They built families, worked, and even celebrated life inside those frozen walls. So how did they do it? How did medieval villagers keep warm when the world around them froze solid? The answer lies in the hidden genius of their daily lives, their architecture, clothing, and ancient survival rituals. But to understand it, we have to step back in time into the heart of a winter that could kill. Imagine England 700 years ago. The air thick with fog, the fields bare and lifeless, snow burying the roads. It wasn't just cold, it was a slow, creeping danger. In the Middle Ages, winter wasn't a season. It was an enemy. People didn't fight it with machines or radiators. They fought it with fire, instinct, and community. A typical villager's home was a small, dark rectangle made of stone or wattle and daub. Sticks, straw, and mud woven together like the bones of the earth. The roof was thick thatch, the floor was dirt, and the single window was covered with oiled cloth or horn, not glass. The fireplace, or more often, just an open hearth, sat in the center of the room. The smoke rose lazily, curling up to a hole in the roof. Sometimes it escaped, sometimes it didn't. The walls were cold to the touch, but they were built thick. 2, sometimes 3 feet deep, to hold in whatever warmth could be found. And when the fire burned low, the walls themselves began to sweat frost. Sleeping beside them meant waking up with ice in your hair. Yet the villagers had methods, clever ones. The hearth wasn't just a fireplace. It was life itself. Every morning before dawn, someone, often the mother, would crouch beside the ashes and breathe life back into the embers. It wasn't only warmth, it was safety. Letting the fire die completely was unthinkable. Relighting it could take hours. So they banked the embers under ash each night, keeping them smoldering till morning. And when that little flame returned, the whole house stirred awake. The family gathered near it, sometimes so close their clothes smoked. The air filled with the crackle of burning wood, the smell of peat, and the faint sweetness of boiling porridge. The hearth was the medieval soul, a circle of orange light in a world of gray. But even the fire had limits. A stone cottage with an open roof could lose heat faster than it was made, so people turned to another secret weapon: each other. Medieval villagers didn't sleep alone. Privacy wasn't a luxury they cared for in winter. Entire families, parents, children, sometimes even livestock, shared the same living space. Cows, sheep, or goats were often brought inside during the coldest nights. It wasn't sentimentality, it was survival. Animals radiated heat, their breath warmed the air. Their bodies turned a freezing cottage into a living furnace. Archaeologists have found floors in old European homes where straw mixed with animal droppings. Crude, yes, but it trapped warmth like insulation. Beds were precious and small. People slept pressed together under layers of wool, fur, and coarse linen. They shared body heat, limbs tangled, faces buried in cloth. A single candle or a glowing coal nearby made the difference between comfort and frostbite. And when the wind howled outside, the sound of steady breathing in the dark was a kind of lullaby. A promise that life still pulsed against the cold. Step outside that house, though, and you'd feel the winter's full fury. Snow lashed through narrow lanes, freezing mud hard as stone. The villagers' clothing had to be as tough as the season. Wool was their shield. Sheep were everywhere, and their fleece was spun into thick garments that trapped air like a natural insulator. Linen shirts beneath, wool tunics above, heavy cloaks over all. Hoods and coifs protected the head and neck, and mittens, sometimes just strips of cloth, covered hands. Boots were stuffed with straw for warmth. The rich, of course, had furs, fox, rabbit, even ermine. But for common folk, a well-woven wool cloak was worth more than gold in January. It wasn't just about fashion, it was about survival. Even inside, people didn't strip down. Clothes doubled as blankets. Children wore their garments day and night, sometimes for weeks, until the first buds of spring. And when one layer grew damp with sweat or snow, it was hung near the hearth to dry, turning the room into a maze of hanging cloth and smoke. At first glance, medieval houses seem brutally simple, but their design was a quiet marvel. Builders used what they had: stone, wood, clay, straw. The thick stone walls that seemed to freeze also stored heat from the fire. During the day, sunlight warmed them slightly, and at night, they released that stored warmth back into the room. Slowly, invisibly. Thatch roofs, though flammable, were excellent insulators. The dense layers of straw trapped rising heat and kept out wind and rain. Wooden shutters covered windows to block drafts, and the floor, though earthen, was often layered with straw mats or rushes. Each new layer of rushes trapped warmth while absorbing spills and smoke. In castles and monasteries, larger hearths and tapestries helped retain heat. Stone corridors might echo with cold, but private chambers were hung with heavy fabric. Candles and torches weren't just for light. They added degrees of heat to small rooms. The medieval world was colder than ours. Europe experienced what historians call the Little Ice Age, between the 14th and 19th centuries. Winters were longer, storms harsher, rivers froze thick enough to hold festivals. Yet medieval architecture evolved to meet this challenge, slowly, ingeniously, without blueprints or science textbooks. What truly kept people alive, though, wasn't stone or fire. It was community. Villages huddled together, literally and spiritually, through the winter. People shared food, firewood, even walls. Neighbors helped repair roofs, exchanged wool, and took in orphans or widows when the cold hit hardest. In the evenings, villagers gathered around a central fire to share stories and songs. The flames danced against faces tired from labor, and for a moment, the cold outside didn't matter. It's easy to imagine laughter echoing through smoky air, the faint tune of a lute or flute drifting between cracked beams. Their world was harsh, but it was also intimate. The cold reminded them of how fragile life was, and how precious warmth could be when shared. Even small habits reveal their wisdom. They cooked stews, thick, slow meals that stayed warm for hours. They drank all, not water, because it was safer and warming. They stuffed walls with moss and straw, plugged holes with mud, and placed animal skins against door gaps. Every trick, every habit, was passed down like sacred knowledge. Some monasteries had clever systems where hot air from kitchens or bakeries would flow into nearby rooms through stone flues, a primitive form of central heating. In Scandinavia, longhouses stretched wide enough for families and livestock to live side by side, sharing heat and shelter from snowstorms that could last weeks. Even bedding was crafted for survival. Wool blankets were heavy, and under them lay mattresses filled with straw, hay, or feathers, materials that trapped body heat better than modern cotton. People slept curled tight, knees to chest, conserving every breath of warmth. But there was another kind of warmth, spiritual warmth. Winter brought death close, and faith became the villagers' inner fire. Churches glowed with candles, their stone walls echoing with hymns of endurance. Priests preached that winter was both punishment and purification, a time to test the soul's strength. In the cold silence, people turned to prayer, not just for salvation but for strength to face another morning. The flickering candlelight became more than light. It was hope made visible. By the time the thaw arrived, the world outside was raw and muddy, but life stirred again. Birds returned, frost melted from the rooftops, and the first shoots of green broke through the earth. The villagers stepped out of their houses, pale and thin, but alive. They had done it again. They had outlasted winter. And as they rebuilt fences and repaired tools, they knew the next cold season would come. But they also knew something the modern world often forgets. Warmth isn't only found in fire or fur. It's in breath shared across a small room, in laughter beside a dim hearth, in the stubborn rhythm of survival. When we look at those old stone ruins today, empty cottages, blackened chimneys, walls crumbling into fields, it's easy to think of them as relics of hardship. But if you listen closely, you can almost hear the echoes of those lives. The crackle of burning wood, the whisper of wool against skin, the quiet heartbeat of people who learned to turn cold into company, and isolation into endurance. They didn't conquer winter. They befriended it, endured it, and built a world that could stand through centuries of ice and silence. So next time you walk past a medieval ruin and feel the chill of wind through the stones, remember this: it was once filled with warmth. Not from radiators or technology, but from something far more powerful: the fire of human resilience. The same warmth that still burns in us today, waiting for the next long winter to test it again.